Hey guys, brand new podcast. Listen, if you enjoyed the Super Bowl with me, Tom Segura, and Warren Sapp live streaming, thank you. And if you haven't seen it yet, you can go to livestream.ymhstudios.com to enjoy it. I got nothing else to promote. New Bill Bert comes out this weekend. New Two Bears is out right now, and I apologize that this is late. It has been chaos in the Kreischer household. We are starting. Halston, I should tell you, we are starting in-person podcasts fucking Saturday. Saturday, we're doing our first in-person podcast. We're doing it outside, socially distant. And guess what the fuck I got, Halston? I got a tester. So we can do them as soon as the furniture comes inside. A little socially distant, but we can test now. I have a lot to talk to you about, buddy. We got all the equipment. We got everything. I cannot fucking wait. We've got a few of these Zooms coming up, and I have a big project I'm working on. We will be having Zooms from time to time. I apologize, but I want you to know live podcasts are coming back, and they're coming back fucking strong. That's all I got to tell you. Today's podcast is a banger. Oh, wait. I should thank our sponsor, the Peacock. Whenever you're funny, Peacock's got it exclusively, streaming tons of comedy hits from iconic sitcoms to brand new originals like my friend Maz Jobrani, who's on the podcast today, has a brand new special streaming right now on the Peacock, and it is called Pandemic Warrior. He is a fantastic comic. But more importantly, when it comes to Peacock, Bears beats The Office. They have The Office. That's all you have to tell me is they have The Office. I will sit and watch all 201 episodes of The Office right now. Plus, they've got bonus extras and exclusives. And if you're new to the show, trust me, you're going to find something you'll love. If you're looking for more classics, you can stream every episode of Parks and Rec, 2.5 Men, plus every season of SNL. Want to try something new? Check out Peacock's original comedies like The Amber Ruffin Show, AP Bio, which I'm pretty sure is Patton Oswalt's show, and Saved by the Bell, which is certified fresh by Rotten Tomatoes. Don't miss all these hits, plus so much more, like Maz Jobrani's new special, Pandemic Warrior. Get started for free at peacock.com and start streaming today. Let's get to the podcast. I'm trying to make these shorter so the podcast lands right in your lap. Today's guest is Maz Jobrani. Maz Jobrani is an Iranian-American comedian. That is important because I'm obsessed with revolutions right now. I'm listening to a great podcast called Revolutions with Mike Duncan. They have like 10 seasons. It's fucking amazing. But one of the things I never really understood, really wrapped my head around, was the revolution in Iran where the Shah took over. Maz's dad was direct, and his family was directly affected by that. And we talk about that. We talk about politics. Now, if you're one of those people that gets tossed because you're talking politics and it doesn't line up with yours, then I don't know what to tell you, because we have a great, honest, open conversation about the fact that a large group of Muslim men are big Trump supporters, and Maz is not. More importantly than all this, we have a great conversation. I really hope you enjoy it, and I hope you check out Maz's special, Pandemic Warrior, streaming right now on Peacock. He's a great dude. He's a fantastic comedian. He's an amazing actor, but he is a better podcast guest. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, with his new special streaming right now on Peacock called Pandemic Warrior, my friend, Maz Jobrani.
He's the man, the myth, the legend, the fucking machine.
Maz Jobrani.
Oh.
Jobrani Maz.
Oh. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. You hanging in there?
I'm fucking losing my mind, to be honest with you.
Tell me about it. Fucking.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad when it started, and then I was okay. You know, we went on tour a couple times, so I was okay in between tours. For some reason, this little chunk is getting to me.
You know, it's been crazy. Like, I'll go up and down in a given day. Like, I'm sick of washing dishes, dude. How many goddamn dishes? We got a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, and I tried to get them involved in the washing, but it's like, okay, they're in the middle class, so they'll come down, put it in, then different cups, and then spoons. And I told my wife, I go, we should just label, everyone gets one item for the day, and they got to get through the day with it. I think it's not going to happen.
I did that in college. I got us all one plate, one fork, one spoon, one knife, and then we painted our names on them so that you each had a color. but we just ended up using the other person's shit.
It doesn't, exactly. In theory, it sounds good, but you need to be surrounded by a bunch of law-abiding. Nobody. I'm just every time I'm like, how do we get so many goddamn dishes, and then the laundry, and then oh god. Anyway, that's the part of stuff that I'm done with. I mean, the comedy stuff. I don't know how much stand-up you've been doing, but between Zoom and drive-in and that stuff is not nearly as much as I'm used to.
Yeah.
But when I do it, it's like, oh, that felt good. Why don't I do that more often? You know?
I haven't been. Let me turn these volume controls off. I haven't been. I toured pretty aggressively at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I did like 4 tours that were pretty like legit, meaning like 22 days in a row, shows every night, and we did drive-in movie theaters, and so that was fun. And then it got to, but it was taxing because there was a certain point where you're tugging on the tiger's tail on whether or not you're going to get the virus, because you're driving around the country, you're hitting all the hot spots. Now, granted, I didn't realize this at the time, but we were probably safer than anyone because we were in our own bubble. Like, we were all on a tour bus. We were never leaving the tour bus. We were never around anybody.
Right.
I mean, ever. And so in hindsight, and I wish I had this insight during the tour, because I would get panic attacks thinking, because, this sounds silly, but like I listened to some comics trash me because I decided to do something different. You forget, man, I know, fucking, you know this probably more acute than anyone, is the second you put your business brain on and you go, hold on, I got an idea. I think I can do this. I think I can do that. Let me see if I can, the system's not working with me right now. I want to shift and see if I can make my own way. And I think there's a respect for that. If it does moderate, or if it fails, people go, oh man, I love that guy. He's always trying. But when you succeed, you get some real dirtbags that go, dude, fuck the Axis of Evil tour. Let me tell you something. Those fucking guys, and that as I do. And then all of a sudden people you're friends with are like shitting on you, or you're not friends with. It's like guys you see at the store that you bump into and you say hi to, you don't really know. And then all of a sudden they're kind of like shitting on you, and you're like, oh, because I tried to think out of the box. And
2020 has been crazy regardless because of all the stuff that happened. And I don't know about you, but I grew up watching the Godfather films. And yes, Fredo is disloyal, but I learned loyalty. And I learned, like, no matter what my friends do in the comedy world, like, I got to be there for them. And, even if I have a beef with somebody, or if I disagree with something, I'll do it personally. I don't know these people that get out there and they're like vocal about, oh, how Bert, what are you doing? I'm like, all right, you know what? Wait till the next time I see Bert, and I might say, Bert, I'll be honest with you, it made me feel uncomfortable when you were doing that shit.
Yeah.
But this thing, you're right. It's been a crazy. But, and by the way, good for you listen, I did one traveling show. I went to Arizona, did the Tempe Improv indoors. Yeah. And I'll be honest with you, I was hesitant going. It was towards the end of last year. And at first I was like, man, this thing is getting worse and worse. Do I go? I know it's limited capacity, all of the above. But part of me also was like, okay, they've been doing it. So you look at other people that have been doing it. Okay, they've been doing it. And secondly, I said, I want to be able to say, at least I tried it during this pandemic.
Yeah.
And how I felt. And the truth is, I went there and I felt uncomfortable. It's true. Because look, you know how it is, dude.
I did some indoor shows too. I was like, I've never looked at you guys as like infectants before. Like, I just fucking back the fuck up.
Dude, and you sit there, and what's funny, first of all, there's 2 things happening. First of all, as comedians, our whole lives we've been taught to be like, promote, fill the room. First time ever, I was like, no, I don't want anyone knowing I'm here. I just want to get my guarantee and get home and do 5 cents.
I don't want anyone to know that I'm doing this.
I'm telling you.
I talked to, I won't say names, but I talked to a comic, and he's a New York comic, just a little bit younger than us. And I called him and I was like, hey, how's Tampa? And he goes, who fucking told you? And I went, what? Hilarious. He goes, who told you? He goes, I don't want anyone to know. He goes, because I think we get LA comics, and not me and you. I won't say me and you. It's definitely not me and you, but there are cunty LA comics that all of a sudden go, and it's a little social justice. Either like, so you're doing stand up in the pandemic? Oh, really? Are they wearing masks? Are they socially like they all of a sudden you're like, hey man, everyone's gonna have to run their own race. Look, Florida is. I mean, I see videos of people in Florida just going out to dinner and with their dad.
They're like licking shit. It's crazy. I don't know what the hell's wrong with these people. What's wrong with these people?
I saw my buddy. Now, granted, my buddy posts fairly aggressively about Trump on Instagram, like to the point where I texted him yesterday. I was like, "Hey man, did you fall off the wagon? Like, I know you went to rehab." Like, and he was like, "No, dude, these fucking libtards." And I'm like, oh, "Okay, I love you, brother. I'll text you. Text me when this is over. I'll talk to you later." But
dude, I lost friends because here's the thing. It's the perfect storm of. I was thinking about this. I thought about this a lot because the fact is, for 4 years, it's like we were bombarded with Trump shit for 4 years. Yeah. Whether you want it or not today, Bert, you might wake up today and be like, today I'm going to become a yoga, guru, and I'm just going to meditate. I'm going to the mountaintop and just relax. And some dude would show up with like a MAGA hat or a tweet or so. It was 4 years of bombardment. And I'll tell you, it's the craziest thing. Cause like you just said with your friend, did he fall off the wagon? I have intelligent friends who started in 2016, like not being Trump fans, realizing Trump is this like clown who is a reality show host who's always been the butt of a joke. I was thinking about, I used to do silly, innocuous Trump jokes about his hair. That was it. And people in the audience would chuckle, ha ha ha. Soon as he started saying racist shit, and people were like, he's saying what's on my mind. They got so passionate about it. And I've lost friends because it's a combination of Trump and then QAnon comes in and goes, oh, there's a deep state and the libtards and the socialists and this. So then all of a sudden people go, live free or die, motherfucker. And you're like, dude, just relax. You're my buddy. And we don't know this guy. Like whether it's Trump or Biden or Obama, I don't care. Let's make fun of the guy. Let's move on with our lives. Yeah. It's crazy.
I have a weird stance about like, because like I growing up in Florida, all my friends are Trump supporters. Not all of them, but the majority of them are all Trump supporters. And I talk to them. I love them. Obviously, I mean, I don't really talk about my politics, but I mean, I think it's pretty clear who I voted for.
Yeah.
But I don't talk about my politics at all. And so, and it was the same way. I used to want to write a joke about this. It was the same way about like, I used to try to figure out like anyone who talked about any issue aggressively and just wouldn't let it down. I used to get turned off from like, if you were a guy who's like, dude, we're fucking chicks tonight. We're banging chicks, fucking pussy. I'd be like, all right, that's enough for me. And on the flip side, if you were gay, you're like, oh my God, I'm sucking cock. I'd be like, all right, that's enough for me. Like I'm just a middle of the road kind of dude. And so like for a perfect example, I wanted to talk to you about this a little bit. But like, I don't like anyone, breaking the law. Like, so when they were looting, the stores in California during the Black Lives Matters, not Black Lives Matters were looting, but whoever was looting during that, I didn't like those. I didn't like that. Yeah. And I'll be very candid. I didn't like the protests during the pandemic. Personally, I just thought that's very irresponsible.
That was kind of like what the comedians are saying about you. Don't go touring. You're like, don't go protesting.
I'm looking at these guys going, shit, you're shitting on me for doing Oklahoma City. These guys are fucking protesting.
Yeah.
So, but on that exact same page, those guys that stormed the fucking Capitol, I have just as much distaste for that behavior as I do for looting a Foot Locker. That I find that I think I'm more astonished by the storming the Capitol. Like I'm like, because you've heard of insurrections, you've heard of, and I want to talk to you about that because I'm obsessed right now with revolutions, and I'm going through a big phase where I'm like, this is great podcast by Mike Duncan. It's all about revolutions, and so you were an actual part. I mean, you were lucky in that you kind of were in New York during the fall of Iran, but like. I was wondering like how you felt about watching that and if that hit any old kind of emotions.
Absolutely. All of the above. First of all, I agree with you 100%. Because listen, I have Iranian friends who love Trump. I mean, it's the craziest thing. That's what,
yeah, right. Color doesn't matter in this. Like,
color doesn't matter. Yeah. And what I say is it's a little different than the way you put it. But what I say is I go, look, let's just not lose ourselves in the cult of personality of anybody. Like I personally, big fan of Obama. But if you come to me and go, hey, under Barack Obama, there was more drone attacks than any president before, and innocent people died in Pakistan, I'd be like, oh shit, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Right. If you come to me, like a lot of my conservative friends now, because I ended up on this crazy WhatsApp chat throughout the whole pandemic, into Black Lives Matter, into the elections. And these guys were so all of a sudden more like right than I thought on the right side. And I'm very like on the left side. But one of the things that was crazy was just the feeling like we've lost you. Like when I talk about Trump, I'm not making fun of your grandmother. The whole point of America is we should be able to make fun of our leaders. And that's a big thing to keep in mind. Now, when this whole Black Lives Matter thing happened, I actually went out to the protest and protested. I was there day one with my kids and my wife because I was like, our kids need to learn. Let me backtrack for a second. Trump goes into office early 2017, puts in the Muslim ban. One of the countries
That's number one. Number one.
One of the things.
I was at the airport the day that was a no travel ban, but I was at the airport the day they stopped letting Muslims into the country. Was that it? And it was. I came out of American Airlines drunk, and they were like protesting down arrivals, and I'm like, shut the fuck up.
I was there. I protested that weekend. I don't know if it was the same day you were there, but I went down to protest simply because as an Iranian American, I was like, look, this thing is being sold to the American people as keeping America safer. However, none of the countries that are on this ban have ever committed an act of terror in America. And furthermore, the people that are coming from these countries are vetted. And a lot of them are like, for example, Iran has a very oppressive government. And I'll get to the revolution in a second. But when that revolution happened, this Islamic Republic came in. They're very oppressive. So now you got a lot of young people in Iran who go to university there. They kick ass. And for the longest time, they were coming to America to study. And a lot of them would stay here and like go work in Silicon Valley or whatever. But at least these guys had hope that, I can get out of this hell and go there. Well, once the Muslim ban happens, these guys can't come. Once the Muslim ban happens, relatives of people that are here can't come, or it's harder for them to come. A lot of people, I heard a lot of stories of things that to me was injustice. So I went down, I protested, and it was interesting because like that night or the next night, I'm listening to the radio. I thought America, because there was protests all over the country at airports. I was like, okay, Americans at least understand that this Muslim ban is hypocritical and it's really just, it's all smoke and mirrors, et cetera, et cetera. However, the radio goes, a majority of Americans support the Muslim ban. And that's when I had a light bulb moment. I go, wait a minute. I thought Americans understood the plight that I'm seeing right now of people from my background. And I realized, I go, the same way when like Black Lives Matter protests were happening under Obama, I always thought, oh, Black people got it. They're protesting. They'll take care of it. And that's when I realized the next time there's a group that's being oppressed for whatever reason, if I can go protest, I'm going to go protest. Yeah. And so that was set in my mind. So as soon as Black Lives Matter happened, went down, family, everybody, we're protesting. It's peaceful.
That's really fucking interesting. And your children are multicultural, Indian and Iranian, right?
Yeah. So my wife's Indian. I'm Iranian, but my wife's been in America since she was 6 months old. I'm here since I was 6 years old. But I felt it was important for them to see this. And I'll tell you, Bert,
can I interrupt for 1 second? Because I've said this before, and I'm trying to question or not if what I'm saying is accurate. But like, it's funny. It's funny when I hear you talk about going down to protest for the. Sometimes I forget. You know, people say I don't see color. Sometimes I definitely see color. I know that you're not supposed to say I don't see color, but like, I don't think of. I think, and I know you came here when you were like 8, but I think of you more as American than I do Iranian. Like, I just think of you as an American guy. Like I understand you're Iranian and your culture's there, and you're probably more comfortable with that kind of food or whatever, like that culture. But like, I just see you as, and that same as Ali Wong. I understand she's Asian, but like, I'm not blind. But I think I see you more as an American dude than I do an Iranian dude.
Absolutely. Listen, I obviously hold on to the culture, whether it's the food or some of the traditions.
I like to party during St. Patty's Day. I'm Irish, but
absolutely. No, absolutely. And the truth is, like, if you ask me, like, yeah, of course, like when I first came to America, I was a Dallas Cowboys fan, Oakland A's fan. Like, I could tell you about baseball. Listen, music-wise, I listen to American music. Comedy-wise, American comedy is
drink alcohol. Like there's
all of the above. So absolutely, you're right about that. But what happened with this thing was, listen, we live in a multicultural society, and the fact is that people hit a breaking point. And again, I'll go back to it. Like, for example, the women's marches and stuff that were happening, the women's march that happened in protest of Trump. That was another one. I was like, in your mind, you go, okay, women got it, they got it. But then you go, no, they don't got it. It's not until, like somebody pointed out, like with apartheid, it wasn't until the people in power started to put a hand down and go, all right, we're going to help get rid of apartheid, till apartheid went away. Similarly, it's going to take all of us. When we see injustice, you got to step up and show up. And I felt like when I saw the thing with George Floyd and I started hearing stories, all of a sudden I started listening. Because one of the problems was, I'll tell you, Bert, going back to that WhatsApp chat that I was on with my friends who, again, some of them were hardcore Iranian, but like conservative, they're well off. A few of them were like, yeah, well, the black people got to pull themselves up by the bootstraps. I go, are you kidding me? I go, you came here, you're living in Brentwood in a gated community. And I go, do you guys have any black friends? Have you even talked to anybody who's black? Because I know, for example, I don't know what the comedian's name was, younger guy, he'd posted about, like, he's like, when I'm seeing this, I'm having like a flashback to things that have happened to me. And he told the story of one time he had a meeting with Keenan Ivory Wayans, and he was excited. He's going to go pitch some show. And he goes, on the way there, I get pulled over by the cops. And the next thing I know, my head is on the ground, in the oil, et cetera, et cetera. That's not an experience I've ever had. But I go, we need to open our eyes to the experiences that people from other backgrounds and cultures might have had. And it's funny because when I said that, my one friend who's in Brentwood, he's like, you know what? There is a black guy I play tennis with. And he says once in a while he comes to Brentwood, he gets pulled over. I go, that's right, motherfucker. What do you expect? So anyway, I just, real quickly, what I was saying was I went down to the protest, and going back to the guys who looted. So it's funny because I was there with the kids and it was all positive, and it was right here down on Fairfax and 3rd. And it's interesting because at a certain point we got hungry, and I'm like telling my wife, I go, let's go get some food. So we went to get food, and that's when her phone started blowing up. People were like, are you guys okay? I'm like, what's happening? There's riots happening and the fire. So I am 100% with you when, first of all, the looters, people who loot and go into the stores and take shit, they're just people taking advantage of a situation, right?
Yeah, they're not there for the message. They're there they're just kids. I don't mean to be dismissive of it, but I was a kid also, and I made a lot of mistakes that I would never want to come up into light these days. And I think they're just kids or poor people. I mean, listen, my house was broken into 2 days ago. I don't blame. I feel actually bad for those two people who their $1 million idea was to break into my house. Like that was their fucking get at it. They're like, shit's not going well. You know what though? Bert Kreischer's got a ton of pictures of himself in a room. And so I feel bad. And I know that's probably not.
And I appreciate you for that. My grandfather used to say that all the time. He used to say, I never judge anybody. He goes, the guy who steals is stealing because he's hungry. Yeah. That's his solution, like you said. So similarly, these guys who looted, absolutely wrong. But at the same time, like you said, you and I aren't going to be like, you know what? I do need a TV, so let me go down and loot.
I'm very lucky in that. So me and you can sit in a room with a piece of paper and a pen and go, I want a TV, and then figure out how to get a TV. And I feel bad for
exactly. So those guys were wrong, and anybody who did anything violent was wrong. All that stuff I totally condemn. However, I will go back because again, when the rush at Capitol Hill happened at the Capitol. That was, again, one of my friends, the conservative friends, was like, this is wrong. And if we do this, then we are just like Antifa. And I was like, no. I go, stop. These dudes are literally trying to overthrow a government. And if you don't believe me, you need to go to the chat rooms. I had on my podcast this guy named Frank Figluzzi. I don't know if you know Frank Figluzzi, but he's always on MSNBC, and he was just on Bill Maher. He's great. You should have him on. He was assistant director of the counterterrorism at the FBI. Wow. And when I had him on in the fall, before this whole attack happened, one of the things he pointed out, he said, look, he goes, I'm a retired FBI guy. And he goes, because I'm retired and anyone else who's in my community, he goes, we don't have to play by the same rules that current FBI has to play by. So like current FBI wants to spy on somebody, they got to get the right, they got to get the approval and this and that and get into chat rooms. He goes, we can go into those chat rooms to see what's going on. And he goes, I'll tell you, Maz, what's going on is there's a group of people who are on the far right who think this is their day and they're coming and they want to overthrow the government and they're weaponized, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when we say, comparing the looters of the Nike store with the guys who stormed the Capitol, the guys at Nike store are just doing stupid shit and they should be caught and arrested and pay whatever they got to pay for doing that. These motherfuckers were trying to overthrow government.
They were legit trying to overthrow the government. They were
legit. If they had got Bert, you tell me, if they had gotten their hands on Nancy Pelosi, what do you think they would have killed her?
They would have killed her. They would have killed her, and I don't think they would have meant to kill her. Maybe they would have meant to kill her, but I think what would have happened is the same shit with watching that guy get crushed. It's mob mentality, and you got to understand. You know what I think a lot of people won't own up to is their ability to participate in mob mentality. Well, I used to have a bit that I was working on that we're all Karens. Like, don't ever think you're not a Karen. Black, white, Mexican, we're all fucking Karens. Sometimes when injustice happens to us, as small as it may be, I remember I called the cops on a moving truck. I don't even know what color the dudes were, but I had ice cream. I had ice cream in my truck, and this moving truck was blocking me, and my ice cream was melting. And there was for whatever reason, that called urgency.
Hilarious.
And I was like, you guys need to fucking move. And the guy's like, real slow, suck my dick. And in second, dude, there is a sincere power in not giving a fuck. When you don't give a fuck, that is when you go head to head with someone that really doesn't give a fuck, you have never felt more helpless in your life. I was like, hey man, move the fucking truck now. And he's like, why don't you get out and suck my dick? And now they're laughing at me. I go, I'll call the cops. And they're like, call the fucking cops.
Oh, no.
Like, by the way, this was 10 years ago. I was like, I'll call the fucking cops. This is before, Maz, this is such a true story. This is before your cell phone would let you dial 911. Had your cell phone let you dial 911 when this happened, I would have called the cops on these guys. But everyone's got that ability. Yeah. And so when they got a hold of Nancy Pelosi, I am certain that the first guy that got her wouldn't have meant to hurt her, just scare her a little bit. But the second guy would have been like, grab her ponytail. I don't even know what Nancy Pelosi looks like.
Sure, yeah, whatever.
They would have ended up killing her. Just that's the way that works. If you are looking to shave your balls, Manscaped is here to provide you the best tools for your grooming experience. I'm telling you, the other day I sat on the toilet and I thought, this is a mess down here. So you know what I did? I grabbed my Lawnmower 3.0 trimmers, the best hygiene tool for the modern man, because they're ceramic blade and advanced skin-safe technology. No more snags. No more snowballs. Trimmer just is waterproof too, so you can take it in the shower if you want. They've got the Performance Package, which is the best buy, the Manscaped Performance Package, best buy of 2021. With their new improved Lawnmower 3.0 Weed Whacker and ear and nose and hair trimmer, bro, I'm clean as shit. That comes in it, plus performance boxer briefs and a travel bag. Have you ever noticed how many nasty nose hairs you have? Take a second. Look at your friends. Stand next to your friends. 79% of partners polled admitted their partner's long nose hairs is a turnoff. Get rid of that shit. The bundle comes with the crop preserver, ball deodorant, and crop reviver. By the way, I used the ball wipes. Fucking amazing. Amazing. Get 20% off plus free shipping with the code BERT at manscaped.com. 20% off plus free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code BERT. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use the code BERT. Thank you, Manscaped, for making my wiener this winter looks so much better.
So that's my point. My point is these guys were actually, in my opinion, much worse than the Reebok guys, because these guys, listen, I don't think they're bad people. Like you just said, I think that a lot of people, most people, you sit down with them face to face, they're good people if they're, of sane mind. But I think a combination of all the conspiracy theories, all the stuff that's been added up, they really felt that they were saving the country. By the way, they kept calling themselves patriots. Even Ivanka Trump put a tweet, we need the patriots today. You start calling yourself patriot, at some point you think you're the superhero. There's actually a guy who's a gaming designer, and he's been commenting on this. He goes, QAnon is set up like a game, in that in the game, you're the good guy, you're going to save everybody. And here's all the bad guys. And he goes, QAnon is the same. They tell you the bad guys are the pedophiles and the deep state and the left wing and the da-da-da-da-da. And Donald Trump is the savior, and you're going to help him save everybody. So these guys were there with bad intentions. And so going back to the Islamic Republic of Iran, the revolution that happened in 79, I was a kid. I was 6 years old, late 78. And what had led up to that revolution was, at the time, the king of the country, the Shah, he had
let's hang on. Let's take our time with this, because this is so I'm so fascinated by monarchies. I'm so fascinated by emperors and all of that right now. So the Shah, I'm apologizing if I'm also stupid as fuck. So is Shah the Iranian, the Persian word for king?
Yes. So let me take you back. So
please. Oh, I'm fucking. By the way, I just got chill bumps. I'm so fucking fascinated by this.
Well, listen, dude. First of all, one of the things, again, as somebody who, and this is again what blows my mind with some of my fellow Iranians or other people who've come from countries that were led by a totalitarian, a monarch, and they weren't seeing that with Trump. Because in all honesty, the one thing Trump did very, very well was he took everyone's reality and turned it to the point where only he was right. And I say, I don't care who you are. There's going to be a time in your life when you're wrong, right? You might be right 6 days of the week, but the seventh day, maybe you made the wrong decision on something. So it really humanizes you if you come out and go, you know what, by the way, guys, I was wrong about that thing. This is what's right. Well, with him, it was always like...
You know what also is interesting about Trump? I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead.
What's also interesting, really, really fascinating about the guy is he was preaching to a group of people that all took what he said as gospel.
Yes.
And people felt like... And I got to admit this. But then there was also these centrists like myself who maybe didn't vote for him, but would hear some of the shit he said and laugh hysterically.
Yeah.
As if it wasn't real. Like, just go like... And then text your buddy like, dude, he called Ted Cruz's dad the Zodiac killer. Like, yes. and you're like, and then you're just sitting. I mean, when I heard that, I laughed hysterically, and I said, "Are you fucking serious? Like that? Like there is a for whatever that is, that kind of shoot from the hip style was so refreshing in politics. And when you hear Joe Biden just come back and everything go back into order." I guarantee you there's some people in the middle going like, I didn't vote for him again. So for this time, I didn't vote for him the first time, but I didn't vote for him. But I missed the razzle dazzle a little bit.
but listen, I totally hear you, but here's the problem, because I totally agree with you. And I talked about this in my stand-up. He says all this shit where you think it's funny, but there's enough nutty people out there who believe it and take it and go one step further. So even before all of this shit happened, in my special, my Netflix special, actually I mentioned it. I don't know if anybody ever did a study to find this correlation. However, in 2016, when he was running, and part of his running was, I'm going to do a Muslim ban. And then he was like, I'm going to change the Iran deal. The Iran deal is horrible. So Iran was in the news. Muslims are in the news. Some dude in Kansas, I think, it was either Kansas or Kentucky, some like white, 60-year-old white dude. He went to like some bar. He sees these two Indian dudes from India who are these engineers. They're just sitting there minding their own business. And for whatever reason, this guy confronts them. And in the heated argument he has with them, he goes back into his car, comes back, shoots them both, gets back in his car, goes to another bar, goes and tells the bartender, I just killed a couple of Iranians. He thought they were Iranians. They were actually Indians. One of them died, one of them survived. However, I guarantee you, Bert, this dude in Kansas or Kentucky, or wherever the fuck he was, had no idea what an Iranian was or why he should be worried about them until he saw the likes of Donald Trump or other politicians saying, that's our enemy, that's our enemy, that's our enemy. So that's where we go back to what you just said, which is, I agree with you. As a comedian, I saw the funny, right? Calling Elizabeth Warren Pocahontas. Okay, that's some fucking stupid shit you would say, some what's it called? Like an argument of some sort you're having with, you want to be funny with a roast battle or something, right?
Yeah.
But when he says it and you and I laugh, there are others who are watching him and going, she's the enemy. So put her on the list, and they're out of their fucking minds.
It's heartbreaking when you realize how stupid some people are. Did you ever see that guy that went into Cosmic Pizza in DC?
Yes. Yeah, that was Pizzagate. That was Pizzagate.
And this is where it's super confusing is, and I understand that I'm not a well thought out guy. So just realize that everything I'm saying is kind of like, I don't know, whatever. So if people lose their fucking mind over this, I don't care. My heart broke for that guy a little bit. And I understand he did horrible stuff, but he's so stupid that he actually was there to save children.
Well, see, Bert, here's the thing. I totally agree with you because my heart breaks for these people as well. And for the people who don't know, that was all from Pizzagate. Pizzagate came about because this whole QAnon thing, it's kind of part of all the conspiracy. But when they got access to John Podesta's email, John Podesta was Hillary Clinton's campaign manager. When they got access to his emails, there was all these orders going through this Cosmic Pizza place. They were ordering pizzas, and whoever was translating it sat there and said, "Oh, what's really going on?" And this is where the conspiracy comes in. These guys are all pedophiles because the Democrats are pedophiles, and pizzas represent the kids. So when they're ordering like 4 cheeses and 5 whatevers, they're actually ordering 4, I don't know, Latino kids and a white kid, whatever the hell it was. And this guy in North Carolina believed it, got in his car, brought his guns, went to the pizza place. And
he really believed it. He really and your heart breaks that this guy was led. If someone had just put him on the right path, he'd be doing something good for the world. Instead, he really goes in, terrifies a bunch of people. Probably, I'm sure, I don't know if he hurt anyone or whatever. But like you go, I'm a little bit of an outsider when it comes to politics and like what's going on. I really don't even know much about QAnon and all these things. But like when you see a story like that, you go, oh my God, he actually believed that?
Actually believes it, but that's the bigger problem comes when you realize there's more people like that than we thought. So when those people go and storm the Capitol, listen, you could be a Trump supporter for a million reasons, but somebody will be like, "Hey, Bert, get on a plane. We're gonna go change the vote." You're like, "I don't know about that. I think I got some shit to do. It's my turn to wash the dishes. I'm not going." But when you show up there, I mean, there's more. So I agree with you that I feel sorry for these people, but I'm also worried by these people because I believe that unless we're able to get these people out of the rabbit hole, we're going to have more and more people believe. Like, that's the thing Trump did. He made reality his own. So he said, listen, if any news organization, including Fox, says anything bad about me, fake news. They made it up. And it's like, no, motherfucker, you said it. You just said what we have clips of you saying the pandemic is just like is a fake hoax made up by the Democrats. So, and then we have an audio of you talking to Bob Woodward, telling him how serious it is. So how can you say that you never said that? So anyway, all of that to say, when I see somebody like that, it actually made me remember the cult of personality that happened under Ayatollah Khomeini, who's the one who took over for the Shah. Now, let me take you back.
Yeah. Take me back.
So what happens, Iran is this country that has had a lot of turmoil all through the 1900s. And one of the biggest things, I used to say this, is the oil, all right? I always say, if you're a country with oil, it's like being a drug dealer. The cops are coming for you, meaning America or England, the West is coming to get you. You better be ready to flush that shit down the toilet. Because what happened was early 1900s, the Brits go to Iran. They're like, oh, they got oil. They discover oil in Iran. So then the Brits show up, and British Petroleum, BP, that we all know, they basically take control of a majority of Iran's oil. So imagine another country, the Brits have come now, the way they colonize a lot of places, they've come to Iran and they're like, we're going to take one of your most, profitable resources, and BP is going to own that, and you'll get a percentage, but we're going to own a lot of it.
It's just like what BP, or when England was like, hey man, we're going to build the Suez Canal and we'll run that. And Egypt's like, wait, hold on. Or was it Egypt? Saudi Arabia was like,
Egypt.
Egypt's like, wait, that's our land. And they're like, yeah, I know, but it's going to be better for us if we just run it because we're going through there. And then that was the whole beginning of Egypt going, hey, fuck you guys. We're
Exactly.
gonna run the country.
This is like, it's like England is like Suge Knight, just going around taking shit. And these other guys are like, wait a minute, I'm going to start my own company. I don't need your shit. So Iran was that. So Iran had, the BP was taking Iran's oil. And then so in the early 50s, so Iran at the time had a king, okay? And the king is called the Shah. Now, a little backstory as well. The Shah of Iran before World War II, the Shah of Iran was, he was friendly with the West. This is the father of the guy who leaves at the revolution. So really like from the early 20s to the early 40s, this guy is the king of Iran and he's helping modernize it. And one of the things that happens is Iranians, the word Iran comes from the word Aryan. We come from the Caucasus Mountains. We are actually like the original white people. So the Shah of Iran, as World War II is coming up, he considers himself Aryan. And he's like, well, Hitler's talking about Aryan. And he's like, he's not, he's got some good ideas. So yeah, exactly. So that's when. By
the way, there's an understatement of how many people agreed with Hitler back in the day. There was a lot of Prince Philip was like, I mean, I met him. He was cool.
Yeah, he was all right.
He threw good parties. What can I tell you?
Yeah, German beer is delicious. It's fantastic. So this guy, he's the king of Iran, and he sympathizes a little bit with the Nazis and Mussolini, all that. That's when the West comes to him and goes, yo. So this is like America. Yeah. America and the Brits and everything, they go, we can't have this shit. So they go, you know what we're going to do? This is what we're going to do. We are going to send you into exile. We're going to let your son become king. And that way your crown will keep the throne. But, you've already said some shit. We got to get rid of you. So this guy, he gets exiled and he goes. And his story is like kind of tragic too. Like supposedly he left and ended up in South Africa and didn't have money and the son wasn't sending it. Oh, that's a whole other story. But his son becomes the Shah of Iran. And this is now late 40s, early 50s. And this guy is like 21 years old. He is Western educated. He was educated in Switzerland. And they're doing all this regal stuff. Like he's got the gown and the crown. And he's like, I am now the king of Iran, right? So this dude's there, he's not really qualified to be running a country, but he is the person that the West wants.
He's 22.
22, bro. What were you doing at 22? I wasn't even doing comedy yet. Doing comedy.
Look, I hadn't even graduated from my first junior year.
Yeah, you were still in college. I was 22. I was an assistant at an advertising agency. I was working at a stationery store. I wasn't running no country. So this dude is there. Now, what's going on? Just like in England, for example, you've got the monarchy and then you've got the parliament, right? And now, I don't know when this all happened, but for the most part, the parliament holds the power. The monarchy is just, she blesses people and shit, like dresses in yellow. By the way, the Queen of England is the only person I say can dress in a full yellow outfit and not be a pimp. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The hat, I'm telling you, bro. So anyway, the Iranian parliament at the time has this guy in power. He's been democratically elected. His name is Mossadegh, Mohammad Mossadegh. And he's this intellectual, older guy. This is early 50s. Now, since he is this guy who is smart and he is part of parliament and he's actually an experienced leader, he now can really kind of push his power on this young Shah, right? So when he comes into parliament, he says to the country, we are going to take back our oil and nationalize it. So what does that do? What that does is he basically says to England, fuck you, get the fuck out. We're nationalizing our oil. Adios. No more this free shit. You can still get a percentage, but mostly it's going to be ours.
Yeah.
So England all of a sudden is like, what the fuck? So at the time,
you're going to agree with this almost 100%. This is how they used to do comedy specials.
What's that?
managers were England, and they're like, "Here's the deal. We got a great
that's
deal for
funny.
you.
Yeah.
We're gonna give you 10 grand. All right. Then we're gonna give you a special. We'll put it on Comedy Central. Don't worry about anything. You can sell it at your shows." And we were like, Iran, going, "That sounds like a great idea. Sounds like a great idea." And then one day, Netflix was like, "How about we give you the money to make a special?" And we're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa! Who's getting that money before?" And managers are like, "I don't even know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?" And then you own your special, and you're like, "Oh wait, so I can sell it in perpetuity? Shut the fuck up."
That is a great analogy. And the Shah being young is the social media influencer who's getting a stand-up special. You're like, how the hell is this dude? He's only 16. He doesn't even have any jokes. You're gonna give him a special? So that's him in this analogy. All right. Yeah. So Mohammad Mossadegh, he nationalizes the oil. Now, at the time, this is early 50s. So as you know, in the early 50s, the biggest threat to America was the Soviet Union and communism. Yeah. That's why we went to war in Vietnam. That's why we're Korea. Every time you said communism, we're like, we got to go and stop that country from becoming communist. So England, being smart, comes to the US, and they tell the Americans, they go, listen, Iran is strategically located. To the north of Iran is the Soviet Union. And if we don't put our influence in there, this guy Mossadegh, who just nationalized the oil, he's a socialist, and he's going to take the country towards socialism and communism, and it's going to go communist, and the Russians are going to get Iran. And that's when America goes, oh, hell no. So under the Eisenhower administration, they organize a coup d'etat. So going back to this coup that almost happened here at the Capitol, America organizes with the CIA. There was a guy named Kermit Roosevelt. There's a book written by, you can look up Kermit Roosevelt. And
I'm writing down so much during this. By the way, these are the jokes I've written. Oh, the Middle East is like hot chicks. Right now, they're great with big tits and oil and whatnot. But when they get older and they're all dried up, no one's going to fucking want them.
Hilarious.
The other one, you went to the stationery store.
Yeah, that's when the windmills become hot. Go on, stationery store. Go ahead.
That's when the windmills become hot.
Yeah. It's like Denmark. All of a sudden, Denmark.
You said I worked at a stationery store, and I almost said, "Aren't all stores stationery stores?"
That's like a Stephen Wright joke.
Yeah, right. I don't. Yeah, but keep going. I'm sorry. I'm fucking so distracting on my own podcast.
I love you, man. It's fantastic. So here's one thing I've learned, and I think I'm like this. I don't know if you're like this at all, but having done stand up for so long, I am good at like going, then totally diverging from the story for like 10 minutes, and then going back.
Yeah, I think that's a stand-up brain.
Yeah, and I think I do that with my family. Like they'll get upset because they'll think they got away from the story. So like we'll start a story in the car, and then we'll get totally distracted. And my wife's probably thinking like, "Thank God I have to listen to this bullshit story." We'll get home, and at dinner I'll be like, "So anyway, what I was saying in the car was," and they're like, "This motherfucker's not forgetting his shit." So
Kermit
I'll bring you back, no problem. Interrupt anytime you want. So
is that the name, Kermit Eisenhower?
Kermit Roosevelt.
All right, keep going.
Yeah, Kermit Roosevelt. So Kermit Roosevelt was I think he's a grandson, or somehow he's related to the Roosevelts. Anyway, I think he's a grandson. He was involved with the CIA. He wrote a book about it, tells you A to Z on how they did it. Matter of fact, CIA, years later, I think under the Clinton administration, because it was all classified, but then under Clinton, he actually came out and apologized to Iran for having done the coup. And it's one of the only times, because every time people, listen, conspiracy theorists think that there's this well-oiled machine somewhere running everything. And I go, you know how much shit has to happen exactly, and how people keep their mouth shut for all this shit that you're talking about to happen? It doesn't happen that often.
No, there's a plane full of people on 9/11 that got flown down to Cuba. My ass.
Yeah, all that shit. So the CIA has said that the one time when it happened, as it was the way they planned it, was the Iranian coup d'etat with Mossadegh. So what happens is the CIA gets some operatives to go into the streets to protest Mossadegh. Now, before this happens, the Shah, who again was a symbolic leader, he saw the heat that was coming on to him because Mossadegh has now nationalized the oil. A lot of Iranians are like, this is great. We're going to get back our oil. So this guy's 21 years old. So what he does, he goes, you know what? I'm going to go on a vacation to Rome. So he just takes off, Like he just fucking leaves.
Grabs a carton of cigarettes and is like, I'll be back.
I'll be back. So he just takes off, and Mossadegh now is there, and that's when they go, we got to do this coup. So they go into the streets, and basically they get these protesters to go in the streets and go, if this guy becomes, the ruler, Iran's going to go communist. And so there's protests, yada, yada, yada. They go down to his palace. They get him out. They drag him out, and they take him, and they send him into exile. And now the door is open again for the Shah to come back. So the Shah lands, and he's like, had a great time in Rome.
What happened? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Someone moved my stuff.
Yeah. Doesn't even he didn't even admit oh, I ran away. He's like, no, I'm back. So he's back, and he's in his early 20s, and he is willing to play ball with the West. Now, have you ever read the book called by John Perkins? It's called Confessions of an Economic Hitman. Have you ever heard it?
Nope.
Pick that up. It's a great book. This guy wrote this book, and he basically goes into all of these government overthrows that America was involved with. And
the whole time you're saying this, I'm going, it's not too far off for a country like Russia to set up this insurgency that happened at the Capitol for us, where they start flooding these, they just start running these chat rooms going like, yeah. Meet up at, what is Chipotle? Okay, Chipotle. Meet up That's a horrible Russian accent. But
no,
yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely right. Because that's the thing. You don't know who's behind some of this shit. Yeah. And so this guy, John Perkins, does his book. And in the book, he says the way America has worked with other countries, he goes, first, they will send in big corporations. And a big corporation will go to some of these countries, whether it's like Chile or Guatemala or Iran or whatever. And they'll be like, hey, we're Bechtel, we're Halliburton, we're whoever. You know what you guys need? You guys need an electrical grid. So we will build that grid for you, and we will run it for you. And you just got to pay us X, Y, and Z, and then we'll rotate that money back into you and give it to your king or whatever it is. And ultimately, it's a foot in, so that now they're dependent on America. And then eventually you go, well, now that you've got all this wealth, king of X country, you should probably get some American troops to protect you, right? Let's get some American troops there, on and on and on. And he goes, if countries play ball with the companies, deal done. He goes, if they don't play ball with the companies, then they send in the CIA to overthrow that leader who's not playing ball. And if that doesn't work, then we attack. So that's the three-pronged approach of America, all right? This is our past. Now, Iran is there. The Shah of Iran is playing ball now. He says, you guys can have, the oil. We'll make a better deal for the oil so the West can have the oil. He starts getting a lot of money because the country's getting rich. So he starts buying weapons and starts building his military. Iran becomes one of the strongest militaries in the Middle East. It's an ally of the West. By the way, a fact that probably a lot of people don't know, right now the current government is a Muslim government, and they're anti-Semitic, they're anti-Baha'i, which is the biggest group that they persecute in Iran. But Iran back then and now has the second highest Jewish population in the Middle East after Israel, because there's Jews aren't really living in any of the Arab countries, but in Iran they were there. So Iran is in the middle of that time between like the 50s until the 70s. The Shah is there playing ball, but also modernizing Iran. If you see pictures of Iran from like the 60s and 70s, there's women in miniskirts. They had discos. Me as a kid, the things I remember, because America exports its culture. So as a kid, the first things I remember was seeing the movie Rocky. I was a big fan of Zorro. I had Batman and Spider-Man comic books. I loved Muhammad Ali. I mean, these are all things as a kid I remember. And so Iran is relatively westernized, or is getting there. Now the problem, so the Shah did some good things. The Shah modernized the country. The country was wealthy. The one thing that the Shah was being criticized for was, because he was a king and a dictator, he had a lot of enemies from different groups. So whether it was like from the liberal intellectuals, or from the communists, or from the religious mullahs, they call them, there's all these groups that are against the Shah. And if you criticize the Shah, back then, he had a secret police called Savak, and you could disappear. So you get this all set up where you've got this guy who's almost like a benevolent dictator to many, but there's also enemies of his.
Yeah.
And as the 70s go on, these people that are criticizing him get more and more critical. And what happens is there's a perfect storm of these people that are criticizing him. And now going back to the Iranian community, we have big conspiracy theorists. So a lot of Iranians think that somehow Jimmy Carter was involved with Ayatollah Khomeini coming back. I don't know if there's any evidence of that. But Ayatollah Khomeini was a religious leader. So imagine he was like the Pope for the Muslims of Iran. And another thing to remember, differentiate, is the Muslims of Iran are Shiite, whereas a lot of Arab Muslims are Sunni, just like Catholic and Protestant, right?
Yeah.
So the fact is they don't get along either. Like they hate each other. Like they'll fight the way like Saudi Arabia and Iran fight. They'll fight. But Ayatollah Khomeini at the time is the leader of the Shiite Muslims. And what's happened with him is, like in the, I don't know the exact date, but let's say late 60s, early 70s, I think the Shah, I think they killed Khomeini's son for some reason. I think they were like criticizing the Shah or something, and he was either jailed or killed. So Khomeini gets sent into exile. They kick Khomeini out. And at the time, by the way, look, was a dictatorship. So they could have killed Khomeini and been like, just execute the dude. But I think that he had so much power that they said, if we execute him, his followers are going to get angry. It's going to lead to a revolution. So let's just, send him into exile. And what he would do back then, before social media, he would do these like political sermons, and they would put it on tape, and they would sneak it into Iran, and they would disseminate the tapes among all of his followers. So all these people, like he was from the outside, he was in Iraq at the time. He was criticizing the Shah from Iraq, and his followers were hearing this, and they're getting angrier and angrier and more in line. And eventually what happens is late 70s, some protests start happening in the streets of Iran. And I believe the inciting factor was there was a movie theater in a city. It's called Qom, Qum, which is the religious city of Iran. So it's a very religious city. So it's like saying like the Vatican or something. Yeah, I'm trying to like find analogies here.
I was trying to like Knoxville.
Knoxville, exactly. Like think somewhere like in the South, right? So it's Bible Belt, but there's a movie theater there. It's called Cinema Rex. And there's like 300 people in the movie theater. Somebody sets it on fire, locks the doors, people die. Now, going back, the religious people blame the Shah's people. A lot of people from the Shah's side say it was a setup to kill those guys, to incite the protests that were happening.
It was an Antifa setup, the old school Antifa flipperoo.
Antifa flip. So I don't know who did it, but the fact is,
this is so similar to what's going on here.
That's what I'm telling you. That's what I'm telling you. So the fact is, so now in the Shiite religion, again, I'm not that religious, so I just pick up pieces and bits and pieces from there. What happens is 40 days after somebody dies, they go and mourn that death. It's like a ceremony, and they go in the streets and they march. Well, you have all these people that died. Now people are marching, to mourn the people, but that march turns into a protest, and the protests start getting, heated and heated and heated. And now the military is called in to quash this protest, and some soldiers shoot into the protesters, killing some protesters. 40 days later, there's protests to mourn the death of the protesters. Oh, wow. That starts to escalate to the point where what happened was suddenly all of the Shah's enemies, whether it was, again, the liberal intellectuals or the religious types, whatever, they all start going into the streets, and the protests grow and grow and grow to the point where it was Iran, the bazaar in Iran, the bazaar is like the marketplace where people go and you can buy anything. And so they called the bazaris, the people who own shops in the bazaars, and they're a big part of the economy. So when they decide to come on board and join the protest by closing their shops, going into the streets, protesting, and then all of a sudden, next to them are doctors and lawyers who've shut their offices to protest. That's when the Shah, I think, saw the writing on the wall and was like, oh shit, this time it's real. So he ends up leaving the country in early 79. He flies out.
Didn't he
That's
go to
when-
New York or something?
I was in New York at the time. So my family left. So this is taking you to my personal story. Late 78, my father's on business.
What's your dad do? Was your dad like buddies with the Shah?
My dad was a businessman. He had came from kind of a tough background, and he worked his way up in an electric company. And what happened, he told me one time, he goes, like in the whatever mid 50s, he goes, the government decided they're going to nationalize electricity. So government owns like PG&E and whoever, Enron or not Enron, you know what I'm saying? All these people, the government's going to own it. But he said they called a few companies and said, we're going to subcontract to you. My dad was one of those companies. So all of a sudden, my dad starts getting these amazing deals, businesses. And so he's like, they're building, you know, the lights and the electricity from, you know, here to Mammoth or wherever it was. And you got to imagine, like, that's a lot of money that you're coming in. And my dad, the best fictional character that I could compare my dad to, he was like Vito Corleone from The Godfather.
Yeah.
Like my dad was someone, he helped everybody. He was very powerful. He knew people like, you know, mayors and police captains and all that stuff. But he used to tell me stories about like, you know, helping people out, but I didn't believe him until when he passed away. And I would just run into people and they'd be like, are you Khosrow Jobrani's son? I was like, yeah. They're like, your dad was the reason I was able to escape Iran. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, you know, I didn't have a house, and your father was, you know, owned a bunch of property, and he told me live in there and pay me whenever you can. He was that kind of guy, like tipping people. He was just always very generous. So anyway, he is in New York on business before the Shah has left, before the revolution. He's in New York on business. And I always tell people, because the Shah had faced so much turmoil in his 20 some odd years in power and had been able to quash those protests in the past, I think everybody saw these late 70s protests as, oh, he's going to stop this as well.
Yeah.
It'll be over soon. So my dad told my mom, he goes, listen, it's winter break for the kids. Why don't you bring me and my older sister, bring them to New York for 2 weeks while they're on winter break, and you know, the protests will die down. You guys can go back. And to the point where I had my baby brother. We left my baby brother in Iran because we thought we're going to be back in 2 weeks. And I always tell people, I go, we packed for 2 weeks and we stayed for 40 years. You know, and that's a common story for a lot of people that left Iran at that time. We thought we're going to go back, but we didn't go back. And so when we come here a few months later, the Shah comes, and shortly after that, Ayatollah Khomeini flies in on an Air France from France, because he'd gone from Iraq to France. And that's again where the conspiracy theorists go, well, if the West didn't want Khomeini to go and ruin the country, they could have kept him in France and thrown him in prison. But I think, you know, the West kind of was like, all right, well, this guy, they're calling for him. And they thought maybe he would actually go, because one of the things that this is going back to what I saw with Trump. One of the things that leaders like this, charismatic leaders, do, they make everybody feel like they're going to fix everything. So Khomeini's thing was, look, the Shah has made himself and his friends rich. I'm going to come in. We're all going to get, you know, we're all going to share in the wealth. Things are going to be fine. Like at the time of Khomeini, doctors, and there was a brain drain. People were leaving the country. And he was saying, he's like, we don't need those doctors. We'll train doctors in 2 months and be up and running. Oh. Well, the truth is, once he comes in and takes power, he is surrounded by a bunch of people, and himself included, and they just start executing people that were part of the previous regime, like straight up like firing squads and shit. Oh so God. It gets dark fast. And quickly, they tell women, cover yourselves up. This is now an Islamic republic. So whereas women were wearing miniskirts, now they have to cover themselves up. Now you've got the religious police. Now you've got, that again goes back to a lot of stuff that I worry when I look at Trump and what you were saying, like part of us laugh at him. Part of his followers are just cuckoo, think that like, you know, they got to save the world with him. But there's a big part also that are these crazy religious types who think that this is all part of the big game plan to make America, Armageddon's coming and Trump's going to stop abortions and we're all going to get guns and Jesus is going to come. So that's the kind of thinking that started happening in Iran, to the point where like this religious police would be going around the streets, and if like a dude is walking with a girl, they just walk up to him and be like, "What's your relationship?" And you'd be like, "It's my sister. Show me IDs." And if God forbid there's not your sister, they'd like take you to jail and whip you and shit. So crazy shit happened, and it got darker and darker because under Khomeini, his mind, when he took over Iran, he thought, okay, this is God, telling me we're onto the right thing. And there's going to be an Islamic wave around the world. And quickly, the neighboring country, Iraq, with Saddam Hussein, who'd been a rival of Iran, there's a region between the two countries where there was a little bit of a debate on whose oil was there. Saddam sees the turmoil in Iran and he goes, now is the time for me to go in and get my oil. So he starts doing that. That's when Khomeini goes, we're ready to fight. And that leads to the Iran-Iraq war, which lasts for about 7 to 8 years. Over 1 million Iranians die. I don't know how many Iraqis die, but it was so crazy. This is how brainwashed people were because, again, in the Iranian religion of Shiism, they believe in martyrs. So when somebody dies for a cause, they put their picture up on the streets. Like when you drive around the streets of Iran, there's pictures of young people that have died in war and they're martyrs. And so what they would do under the war with Iraq, a friend of mine who had gone to, was part of the military, because military is mandatory service there. He said early on in the war with Iraq, the Iraqis would line minefields up and the Iranians would line up sheep to go into the minefields to explode the mines, and then they could attack. Well, as you can imagine, as soon as a bomb exploded, the sheep would disperse. So it was the stupidest strategy ever. So what did they do? They went and got these like young, like 12, 13-year-old kids, like the Boy Scouts basically. And they said, are you really patriotic to Iran? If you really believe in this God, you have been chosen to be a martyr. We're going to put this key, that's the key to heaven, around your neck. We're going to line you up and you're going to march into the mines and detonate the mines. And then our soldiers will come and fight. And that's the kind of shit they were doing, Bert.
If you're having trouble meeting your goals, difficulty with relationships, or trouble sleeping, maybe you're feeling stressed, depressed, a little anxious, BetterHelp is available. BetterHelp offers online professional counselors who can listen and help. All you got to do, fill out a questionnaire to assess your needs. BetterHelp's going to match you with your own licensed professional therapist, and you'll be talking to them within 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not self-help. It's secure online professional counseling. I have been having absolute horrific anxiety, and I am in therapy, and I do it online because it's easy for me. I don't have to go anywhere. I can just come in here, sit down, schedule a weekly video. Sometimes I do a phone session on the treadmill, and everything I share, just like on BetterHelp, is completely confidential. You don't have to sit in an awkward waiting room. You just show up, get a great therapy session. And if you don't like your counselor, you can change counselors. It's super easy and free to change counselors if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline counseling, and financial aid is available. In fact, so many people are using BetterHelp that they're recruiting additional counselors in all 50 states. This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp, and Bertcast listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/Bert. Visit betterhelp.com/Bert and join the over 1 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced BetterHelp professional. It's crazy to me because that kind of like lunatic beliefs and things where like when you talk about are you guys brother and sister? I'm gonna you better show ID or I'm taking one of you to jail. That behavior's kind of been unleashed on the internet in America of like crazy laws where you go, hold on, did you just dead name her? And you're like, wait, what did I do? And then you're like, you don't have pronouns on your Twitter profile? How dare you? You're being canceled. Like, you made a joke 10 years ago. That's it. We're done with you. You know, like it is kind of like I mean, it's just fascinating to me because as a kid, I all I really knew about Iran was as a kid was these were my takeaways, that the embassy got stormed and there were hostages, and that they wouldn't release the hostages until Reagan was inaugurated. That they didn't like Jimmy Carter, and then
the reason. Sorry to interrupt, because I mean, listen, there can be like a 20-part documentary about this whole period, because the reason they stormed the embassy was so when the Shah flees, I think he first went to Egypt where Anwar Sadat welcomed him, but he was persona non grata because he was fleeing, and the people that took control in Iran were telling every country, we want him back. We're going to put him on trial. Well, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to kill the guy.
In the worst way possible.
Worst way possible. So now the Shah also, we find out, had cancer.
That's why I said he went to New York. Didn't he? Where did he go? He went maybe
Sloan Kettering. He went to Sloan Kettering in New York. So he goes to Sloan Kettering. Carter welcomes him. That's where the hostage crisis happens, because these students storm the embassy and they go, we're going to keep your embassy workers until you return the Shah. So that's where all that was going on. And as you said, Reagan, as he was running for president, struck a deal with the hostage takers, and I'm not quite sure what was given to them in return, but whatever it was, the deal was you will release the hostages when Reagan, is inaugurated, which is what they did.
I remember the day they released the hostages. I was in grade school. My mom was teaching, and I remember someone busted in the door and goes, "They've released the hostages," and it was like, oh,
dude. I'll tell you, as an Iranian American, because I do this in my stand-up now, but I remember, because listen, we were kids, so you forget certain things, but then when you're reminded, you go, oh shit. So I just remember Ted Koppel on Nightline. The hostage crisis is what made Nightline, because he would come on and be like, day 132. And I was like, shit, yeah, like this thing's still going. And, I'm caught in these two worlds, because I'm like, I don't support this, but, on the playground, I got to people are going to come at me for it. They'd call you fucking Iranian back then. That was the thing. They'd call you fucking Iranian. And I didn't get beaten up, but I got called fucking Iranian. And it was like,
I mean, I'd never, at that time, I had not to interrupt, I apologize. I had no concept of Iran at all, except for what was on the news. I'd never met an Iranian. I never met anyone. And so I can only imagine being a kid and then being brainwashed. It's us against them. I said to DJ Vlad is a very popular interviewer.
Yeah.
And I think he took offense to it. He goes, you wrote in your book that you miss the days when we hated the Russians. And I was like, yeah, it's like you knew who your enemy was. So you didn't have to. And he was like, yeah, I was a Russian kid in America. Right. It was really rough. And I was like, oh yeah, I didn't see it that way. I'm sorry, man. But it is interesting, but I keep going. I apologize.
No, that's the thing. See, that's the thing. That's why, again, I think one of the reasons Trump pissed me off as someone who, it was almost like having flashbacks to back then. I had flashbacks to the bully who would call me fucking Iranian. When he would call anybody anything, I was like, who the fuck are you? You understand? And because now I'm old enough to be able to say that. But when you're a kid, you're like, what did I do? Like, I didn't do anything. And it's exactly what you just said. It's like, look, I'm in America. I watch football. I play baseball. Like I'm just trying to get by on my day, and you're throwing me in. And that's the problem, is like, when you get leaders, this is the problem I have. When any politician comes in and goes, it's the China virus, it's the Muslims, it's the Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers, it's the caravan. Well, you as a leader might mean the government of that country. You might mean the actual criminals from that country. But the problem is there are a lot of assholes in this world, and a lot of kids are assholes, and they're going to end up in that school, and that poor Korean kid that has nothing to do with China, some dickhead's going to be like, what's up, China virus? And this kid's gonna be like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
First of all, I was born at St. John's in Santa Monica. Secondly, I'm Korean, you fucking idiot.
Yeah.
I mean, the level of ignorance that runs. So that's why I like, when you're a leader, you got responsibility. It's one thing to come in and be like, look, the Chinese government is undercutting us because of the currency, blah, 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 blah. They weren't honest. And so therefore we're going to put some sanctions on them. I just want to remind people, this is not about any kind of, Asian Americans or anything. They're good people. We love you. Thank you. You know what I mean? You almost got to like spoon feed people. Otherwise, this kind of shit happens. And it's like, I remember, I talk about it in my stand-up, and in all honesty, I don't remember if the incidents were the same, but I remember there was a sixth grader when I was in the fourth grade, and they would call me fucking Iranian. And I remember coming one day, I had a nice bike. Like back then was when BMX bikes were happening.
Oh yeah.
I had Racing Incorporated. Have you ever Mongoose Racing Incorporated? What did you have?
Mongoose.
Yeah. So I had Racing Incorporated. I had I was a spoiled kid. My dad was, well off, so he'd buy me shit. I had like nice pedals and all this shit. And we would park our bikes in a gated fence all day at school, and then come get your bike afterwards, and it'd be locked, and you come get it. I come to get it one day, and the fucking pedals are gone. And I'm like, who took my fucking pedals? And I don't know who took them. I don't know if it was the guys who were going after the goddamn, the fucking Iranian. I don't know who did it, because that was the only pedals that were taken that day were my pedals. But I remember walking my bike, because there was no pedal. I'm walking my bike to the bike shop. And there was like one, because I grew up in Marin County, Northern California. It's very white. There was like one black kid who was in the fifth grade. I just remember him talking to me like, dude, this could be fine. And in my stand-up, I go, he's walking next to me going, don't worry about it, dude. I've been dealing with this shit for 250 years. Let me tell you what you got to do. You got to see a therapist or become a comedian. That's it. And that was it, dude. I mean, it's crazy to be a kid in those times when your people are the enemy and there's nothing you can do. But like you said, the parallels with today are insane. I mean, I see videos, Bert, like when Trump became president with all the anti-Muslim shit that was going on, I saw videos on Twitter, people posting videos. There was a family in Florida, an Arab family, and it was clearly they were Arab, and like the mom like had her hair covered, but they're at the beach. And they're just sitting there at the beach, just hanging out. And some fucking drunk dude shows up with his buddies, and he's like, "This is America, goddammit, take that off. This is Trump's America, motherfucker." And I'm like, "Really, dude? Really?" Like, what?
I have no leniency for people who devalue other people. I have a stuff like that kind of breaks my heart, where you go, what the fuck is wrong with someone? Can't you understand that? I don't know. It's like, if that here's it. If that was in a movie, you'd immediately hate. If that guy that did that to her saw that in a movie, he'd immediately hate himself and go, that guy's a fucking asshole. But then he does it, and he just thinks, I don't know, whatever.
It goes back to what you said about feeling sorry. A lot of times these people who do shit like this come from an abusive home or something like that. And my hope is, I hope people break that chain. Like, if you come from an abusive home, then do your best to not be abusive, and I tell my kids all the time, I go, guys, if you're ever in a situation where you have friends of yours are picking on somebody, I go, I want you to step out of that circle and team up with the kid being picked on. Because I go, that's where you will feel invigorated and you will feel good about yourself. And this other shit is bullshit. Like I saw my daughter, she's 10. So they're on like Zoom and chatting and all this stuff. And she was using my computer. So when it came up, I saw some of the discussion, and I couldn't make out if they were leaving one of the girls out. So I very, coyly, I was walking with her. I was like, hey, I saw you guys were talking, and that one girl, what was she saying? And she's like, oh yeah, she was trying to blah, blah, blah. And I was trying to see if they were like leaving her out. Yeah. And I was like, so wait a minute, honey, were you guys leaving? She goes, oh, no. She was just having trouble logging on. I go, thank you. I'm happy to hear that. And I go, I want to remind you, if ever your friends are saying, let's leave so-and-so out, you get out of that friend, you get out of that group, and you go, you know what I'm saying? Because, dude, I think as comedians, we get to reflect a lot on our past. And I think having seen that shit when I was a kid, I think that really etched in my brain. And I've always been an empath. Like I always feel for people that are underdogs. Like I remember when we first came to America, my dad's friend had us staying at his house for a brief moment, and they had a daughter who had Down syndrome. And I remember we were all sitting at the table, we're all eating, and she was kind of acting up. And the parents like yelled at her, they're like, whatever, so go to your room. And she kind of was like upset, and she goes to her room. And you don't even know, dude. Like I found myself like 5 minutes later, like kind of moseying over to her room and just being like, hey, you okay? You want me to let you out? I mean, I felt like, I mean, what the they locked her up. Kind of bullshit parenting is that?
You slid a Snickers bar to her like Chunk in like
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Green Mile shit, man. Oh my God.
Oh, it's interesting. I bet you and your wife had such different experiences as children, where your children are growing up in a place where, I mean, I don't know. I like I said, I don't know what it's like in the rest of the United States. I only live here, but my daughters they went to public school, but they were so oblivious of racism, but they were acutely aware that they were white and they were not Mexican or black, or like it was almost like a really healthy dose of Hard Knocks, but with a bunch of privilege covered around it, where they were like, they're very open-minded about gender equality and transgender rights and issues and all of that, and race and everything. However, they also grew up in the yard at a public school where they were like, oh, Mexican kids say the N-word, black kids say the N-word. We just stay away from that shit. Don't ever want to fight a black chick. Like I watched this one girl fuck this one girl up in the hallway. Like it was that kind of world where you're like, okay, so you have enough to stay out of the mix, but yeah.
No, it's great. Listen, I really, my kids give me hope for the future, because exactly what you said, like they seem to be in the know, and it's not a cancel culture thing at all. It's kind of like they're on it. Like my son, he's in 7th grade and he's part of like the social justice group, and they're talking about, from climate change to Black Lives Matter to, I mean, they're in the know, and that's why it always confuses me or puzzles me when I see young people that are like hardcore Republicans. And again, that has nothing to do with like, again, I have Republican friends, I have Democrat friends, but like the Ben Shapiros or the Charlie Kirks who are like in their early 20s, and they're like, well, we need to defend the blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, don't you have a rebellious bone? But I think that they're rebelling now against the left. But in reality, it's not really rebellion, because I think whether you like it or not, I don't care what side you're on, this country is becoming more diverse. This country is moving in, like, they say that the arc of the social justice bends towards, or the arc of time bends towards, I'm messing it up, bends towards justice, basically. So when you look at like, whatever, a few years ago, gay people didn't get married legally.
That's so crazy that was real,
right? 30, 40 years ago, black and white couldn't do it, right? So that
still bothers me, but yeah.
Yeah, well, of course. I'm aware. Don't want to bring up sensitive issues.
There was a comic, I wish I could remember that had a great joke about that. And I was like, it was a long time ago. Keep going. I'm going to fuck his joke up.
No, but I'm just saying, like, these kids, you're right. Like I have hope when I see our kids, and listen, you're right. In a way, they're still privileged. Like, where we're growing up, they're privileged, but I do like to see, oh man, I love it when I see like young people who are politically active. We need to be politically active. The fact that 150, 160 million people went out and voted this time, like the loser and the winner had the most votes. I think that's a world we need to be a part of. I think we need more and more people to care about these things, because when you don't care about it, then you sit back and then you complain, but you go, well, what did you do to change it? Like this time around, like I'll tell you, I've become more and more political as the years have gone by. So, few elections back, I might be like, oh, I'll donate a little bit of money. Then like the previous election, I was like, I'll donate a little bit more money. Then this time around, I donated money. I did phone banking. I went to Nevada and was a poll watcher. Like I was getting active. I was helping people make sure they had the proper. There was a nonprofit that's also nonpartisan, but tends to be more people on the left are reaching out. But it was to make sure people had the right IDs to vote in every state. So I felt like I was part of something, and I think that's important. I think our kids, your kids, my kids are that, and I think that they're unapologetic about it. You know, I want my kid to come up and be like, look, I'm organizing a protest or a march or a fundraiser or whatever. I'd be proud of that kid. I'd be like, that's how, because you see people, when you watch that girl, Amanda Gorman, give recite the poem at the inauguration, and she's so eloquent, and she's 22 years old. And I was like, holy shit. I was like, how, dude, I've been doing stand-up for 22 years. I'm 48 years old. I keep trying to write an op-ed piece about something and talking myself out of it. I'm like, nobody wants to hear my opinion. I don't want to do, or even like I wanted to do a rant on my Instagram. I don't want to, people are going to judge it. No, be proud, stand up. That person's a person just like you. Get up and fight for justice. And I think our kids are that.
Yeah. I said to someone during this, right before this election, I said, I don't really care about politics. I don't really follow it too much. And it was maybe it was a black chick or a black dude who I was with, but I can't remember if it was Miss Pat or my bus driver, Ron. But they were like, yeah, you don't have to. And I was like, yeah, I don't. Yeah. And they're like, yeah, if he gets elected again, nothing changes for you. And if Biden wins, nothing changes for you. Like you have no horse in the race. Everything's going to be fine because you're white. And I'd never realized, like, I'd always just been like, I don't know, politics turn me off. It seems like a reason people can't hang out or party or be at a bar. The second someone brings up politics, everyone shuts down and, oh, fuck. And all of a sudden, why'd you have to bring that up? He's right over there. Like, let's just all hang out.
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, you don't have anything to lose. I mean, I forget who it was that told me this. I wish I could know because I would love to credit them. And I was like, oh, fuck, man. Now I don't have the luxury of being, I mean, I try to keep it out of my act because I definitely don't want to polarize people who decided to come see me do stand-up. And I know that I don't have all the answers, nor do I have, whatever opinion I give you is going to be half informed. And so why would I, like, I'm not that guy.
But you know what? That's a beautiful thing because you got to talk about what you're passionate about, what you want to talk about, right? And the fact is, your politics may find you. Like I was talking to Debbie Gutierrez on my podcast, and she told me, because she started getting political on Twitter, and I was like, Debbie, what made you want to get political? Because she used to do just parenting stuff.
Yeah, and
she said, our kids. I don't know if both or one are LGBTQ. I think one of them is. And she said, the church we went to was suddenly like unaccepting of that.
Wow.
And she said, I realized I got to step up. It's my kid. And that's why I'm telling you, it's like a cause will come your way where you're like, oh shit. Like for me, look, I've always been political and there's been a lot of stuff where, again, I was a little more hands-off political. I did protest, like I'm very anti-war and stuff. But I did protest against the Iraq war. But this time around, I think part of it was that Muslim ban and realizing like this motherfucker's coming after everybody. And when I say this motherfucker, not just him, just that mentality of, you know what, we're going to, Muslims, refugees are bad. I mean, listen, I could break it down for you left and right, but I keep running into people who tell me these stories. There's a group called Miri's List. This girl, by the way, as many as crazy like nut jobs as there are out there, there's people doing the work of angels. So this girl, Miri, is this, white girl who all of a sudden got a message from a friend going, hey, I know you had babies recently. There's a Syrian refugee family who recently came to this area. Do you have any of their car seats, anything I could use? So they go to visit the Syrian family. They've come to America. They got nothing. So Miri, what does she do? She puts a little post on her Facebook page. Hey guys, trying to find some stuff for this family. Can you help me out? And all of a sudden, people step up. So long story short, she creates a nonprofit called Mary's List, M-I-R-Y, Mary's List. So she's been helping all kinds of refugee families from all these different countries. And these are people running away from war, and they're coming here and they got nothing. So she helps them, find housing, get their furniture, et cetera, et cetera. And what's amazing about her is when I talk to her, she goes, before Trump had taken over, the U.S. had a limit. It was maybe 120,000 refugees can come to America. And she said that was the number that was set. And by the way, all those people are vetted to make sure they're legit, all that stuff. And she goes, usually when they were aiming for 120, you would get 80% of that would make it here and we'd settle them in. She goes, under the Trump administration, every year that number's gone lower, lower, lower to the point where this past year was 18,000 were allowed. So we went from 120 to 18,000. Now, why does that affect me? I'm not a refugee, but the reason it affects me is because I'm an immigrant who left a country that was in turmoil and I landed in America. And if I had landed and they told me, no, you're not allowed, go back to that situation.
Ooh.
I go, I go, how do I not sympathize with somebody who's in a war that, possibly we had a hand in somehow causing? And you know what I'm saying? So
we had a hand in any fucking war in this. We have some skin in that game.
Always, dude.
I'm getting contacts. And if you're a contact lens wearer, ordering contacts can be a hassle. Now you can order your contacts without even leaving the house. And it's super easy to do with 1-800-CONTACTS. They've been delivering contact lenses for 25 years and have your contacts in stock. Even if you have a strong prescription or astigmatism, it couldn't be simpler. You order the same contacts you would get from your doctor. Just look on the side of your contact box. You'll find your prescription details, and you can order online, order over the phone, or with their app, and they ship them fast and free to your home. You can even renew your prescription online using their express exam. There's award-winning 24/7 customer service if you ever need help or have any questions, and their price guarantees means that if you find your contacts at a lower price elsewhere, they're going to beat it. They have your contacts in stock. I'm telling you, that was and they've been doing this for 25 years. All you got to do is let 1-800-CONTACTS get you the contact lenses you need. Order online or at 1-800-CONTACTS.com. I said order online or at 1-800-CONTACTS.com. Download the free app or just call 1-800-CONTACTS. That's 1-800-266-8228. So what's fascinating to me is you think this is, by the way, everything we're talking about is so charged lately that I want everyone to remember we are also just comics. And so when I come up with a half-baked statement like that I'm about to make, remember, I'm just trying to work a bit out one day. That's all, every purpose of any conversation I have is either to try to help somebody, read a book, or write a joke. But when you think about it, I got really bothered when I got really bothered. This is gonna sound so fucking white privilegey, but when we redid our house and the stereotype that was being put out there about Mexicans, when you have any sort of construction going on that you're living through and you're living in a construction site, you realize that is an extremely inaccurate. There's a very inaccurate statement. You can't say everyone, but in my experience, all the guys were Latino, most predominantly Mexican. They were the sweetest guys, the fucking most fearless guys, and the hardest working guys. And they're working on our new house too. I love these guys. They're kind of like family. Like you use anyone that knows that they've done work. The people that have done work on your house kind of turn into family a little bit. Yeah. And so I got really bothered with any stereotype that was put out there about Mexicans being, they're just coming here to rape. And I was like, that's not who fucking crawls through a tunnel from one side of the country to another side. That's not the person who gets crammed in the underneath of a truck to get into the country. That's someone looking for opportunity. Yeah. The rapist is just going to stay there. if anything, we should not allow anyone to have any more American kids. Like that, we have got our fill. Like that's who's lazy. That's who's not doing shit.
Dude, I say it all the time. I go, the biggest threat to Americans are Americans. All right,
horrible.
Right off the bat. And secondly,
I'm one of them.
Yeah, listen, dude. Listen. First of all, no apologizing because we're just talking. And one of my biggest pet peeves, by the way, is when people come on my social media, Twitter, they go, stick to comedy. I'm like, you know what, motherfucker? You stick to accounting or whatever the fuck it is that you do. I'm a human being and I can have political opinions. And this is my political opinion. And what you just said, see, that's where you see these people. And, I guarantee you, Bert, if one of those guys that was working on your house, you saw him out there one day crying and you're like, what's going on? They were like, well, they deported my wife because X, Y, and Z. You would be pissed off and be like, fuck this bullshit with the deporting and blah, blah, blah. Because, dude, I don't know if you watched it. They have this documentary series on Netflix. It's called Immigration Nation. And usually I go from episode 1 to 10, whatever it is, I watch it. Well, this one, by episode 2, I was like, I can't watch this anymore. It was so heartbreaking because it talks about these documentary filmmakers were able to follow around ICE agents just at the time when Trump became president, and they would go around deporting people. And it's interesting because at first, the ICE agents are like, well, I have no problem doing what we're doing because we're deporting people who have a criminal record. So I'm fine with that. As soon as that guy says that, he gets a call and he's like, hangs up. He's like, well, I guess we're just deporting people whose visas have expired. So he went from deporting people that had criminal records to deporting people that did not have criminal records. And then you see this one story, like, just breaks my heart. There's a guy who was like a cop in El Salvador, and there was these Salvadoran gangs who were coming after him. And there's a New York cop who is talking in the documentary on his behalf. And he's like, yeah, when so-and-so, Eduardo in El Salvador, whenever I needed any kind of information on the Salvadoran gangs, I would call him. He'd help me out in New York. And then one day I was talking to him. He said, hey, listen, man, they're coming after me. I need to come to America. So he brought his family to America. Now, when he comes here, he's not documented, but he sets up shop. He becomes like a plumber. He pays his taxes. His kids are teenagers. He's living the American dream. Everything's fine. And the cops show up, the ICE shows up, and they're like, sorry, buddy, we got to deport you. And he's like, but I'm here. I'm doing everything right. And they go, well, under this new administration, you're not. Get out. And you just see that, and you're like, what the fuck? And so all of that to say, I think our lives are politics, and I think that when we let down our guard, and you don't have to like be on stage talking about it, but there are times when, going back to the bully thing, you either stand up for the underrepresented, or you sit back and watch it, and that's the choice, right? So I choose to stand up, and I take a lot of shit. I take shit from my own people. I had so many Iranians that love Trump that were on there calling me.
There is a huge swath of Middle Eastern dudes who loved Trump, loved him, and I was very taken aback by that. I didn't expect that, but
it's crazy. They love, they think that he's strong and this and that, and then the Iranians thought, because one of the problems with Trump, again, going back to logic, like when you talk about this guy who shows up at the pizza place and doesn't think for a moment, why would they have a pedophile ring in a pizza place? I tried to joke about it. It was kind of dark, but I was like, by the way, pizza place is the worst place to have a child sex ring, because you show up, you'd be like, these kids are a little fat. You got any kids? Is there a child sex ring at a Whole Foods, somewhere healthier? These kids have been eating the pizza, so something like that. I forget the joke, but it didn't. But anyway, the Trump had said that he basically had put in the minds of a lot of Iranians that he's going to get rid of the Muslim leadership, the mullahs. So a lot of Iranians really bought into that. Now, then you go, well, what's his game plan? They're like, I don't know. There's really no game plan. So I continued to be vocal and probably lost a lot of fans for it. But I was like, I would rather have that than to be quiet. But this is me, because this is just who I am. than to be quiet and be like, oh, whatever. I kept all the fans that I'm lying to now because, you know what I'm saying? Like, but that's been my style for my whole entire career. I've talked politics.
Yeah. What we should pivot and talk real quick about your special. And I was listening to your podcast and I just was listening to the beginning of that guy that had the worst 2020, Sammy Obey. What happened to his 2020?
Holy shit, Bert. First of all, I want you to come on my podcast.
I would love to.
Would love to have you on there. So Sammy Obeid. Sammy's this sweet guy. So people that don't know, my podcast is called Back to School with Maz Jobrani. And the whole concept came because my son and daughter would ask me questions that I didn't know the answer for. So I said, instead of Googling it, I'm going to bring on experts and we'll learn from them. Now, it's become basically an excuse for me to talk to people with interesting stories. So I've had people on like Michael Cohen, who was Donald Trump's fixer, all the way to a guy who helped land the rover on Mars, to a woman who is a cave diver. She goes under glaciers.
Oh, I just bought her book.
It's amazing.
I just bought her book. Yeah.
Have her on your show. Her story, the book is crazy. Her story's crazy. But so Sammy is a fellow stand-up comedian, and Sammy is of Palestinian descent, but he's American. And here's what's crazy is I have done Zoom shows with Sammy all through the pandemic. He and I both went to UC Berkeley, so we've done shows for incoming freshmen at UC Berkeley for the past 3 or 4 years. He's this smart, handsome, put together dude. I'm on his mailing list on email, and one day he sends out an email and he's like, I got MS, muscular multiple sclerosis in 2020. And I'm like, what? I start reading it. And basically the gist of it is he started having these pains and this weird shit. And like, he would like open a door and like his shoulder would crack and he couldn't figure out what's going on. And then he emails his doctor to set up an appointment, doesn't hear back from them and starts calling them. They're not responding. And then gets in touch with them 4 months later. And they're like, oh, that guy has disappeared. We don't know where he went. He's like, what? So then he finds a doctor on Google that's in his insurance because he has Obamacare. And she's got 1 star on Google. And then she sends him to go get tested. And it comes back that you might have MS. And he's like, what? So she's basically telling him he's got this disease that might kill him. And then it falls on him to go and do further research to find out it wasn't MS, but it was something else. In the meantime, he finds out that his father is cheating on his mother. And I mean, it's the craziest story. As he told me, I go, this is a movie of what happened to you. And in the middle of all that, he thinks he got coronavirus. So it's like, I mean, it's the craziest story ever.
I gotta listen to that podcast. I started listening to it the other day on the treadmill, and I was like, wait, what the fuck? And then I was like, I'll just talk to Maz about it.
It is crazy. It's one of those things that we're like, I'll tell you, like under my COVID, like I'll tell you, as soon as COVID hit, our dryer stopped working. So my wife would send me out to public laundromats to dry the clothes. And every time I would lean into the dryers to get the clothes, my forehead would hit. I'm like, oh fuck, I got COVID head. So that happened. And then we got there was a mouse loose in our house and the exterminator couldn't catch him. So finally he gave me this thing. It was like the jaws of death. And he's like, you set it up, you catch him. I caught the fucking thing at like 3 a.m, but he wasn't fully dead. He was running around my house with his head in the thing. I mean, I thought I had a crazy 2020. Like it just our refrigerator stopped working. The house was falling apart. When I heard Sammy's story, I go, dude,
nothing compared to that.
Nothing compared to that.
Tell me about the specials on Peacock, right?
Yeah. So the special is called Pandemic Warrior. So what happened was end of 2019, I go to Dubai, December 2019. I shoot a special. I call it Peaceful Warrior because my whole point was I'm not going to get into arguments with anyone who is politically not aligned with me because that happened a few times where my show got derailed. And I decided instead of arguing, I'm just going to Tai Chi that shit. So the next time I say a Trump joke and somebody yells at me, I'm just going to be like, oh, thank you for expressing yourself. What a great country. You can do that. Like there's actually a clip. If you go on YouTube and put Maz Jobrani Trump heckler, there's a lady at
I think I saw this video.
Yeah, it's at what's it called? What's the one in Burbank called? Not the Ice House.
Fucking Flappers.
Flappers. It's at Flappers. And the lady, I do this very like innocuous Trump joke, and she's drunk. She's like, I, as a woman, am offended. And I was like, that's fantastic. In America, you can be a woman and be offended. What a great country. Like, and she just doesn't know what to do because I'm not like going like this. I'm Tai Chiing it. So I called my tour Peaceful Warrior because I was like, I'm still going to say my shit, but be peaceful. Film it in 2019, December, thinking to myself, okay, 2020, I'll go home. I'll sell it. I'm on tour. This is my year. And then fucking lockdown.
God.
And I'll tell you what's amazing, Bert, is I started watching some specials that came out during lockdown. And I remember Seinfeld, one of the best comics in the history of comedy. His special came out. I'm watching it, and it felt foreign because it was almost like he shot it on Mars because there was an audience. And he's talking about like how upset he is about going out of the house. And I was like, what? Like, it was weird. And it it was funny stuff, but it just was, we were in lockdown. So I realized since it was almost like a blessing for me, it's like, okay, since mine isn't coming out now, let me go back and shoot like 3 minutes at the top of me in a closet doing comedy to a computer. And then tell people I'm aware that we are on lockdown. And now here's the special I shot in Dubai. You watch it, and then I come back and I do another like 3 minutes at the end as the credits roll. And I called it Pandemic Warrior. And so it's coming out on Peacock January 28th. People can stream it all the time. And I'm doing a run because I support a charity called International Medical Corps. And they are like Doctors Without Borders. But they actually go to places of disaster and they train the doctors to deal with those disasters. And currently they've been helping with COVID relief all over the country. And so I was just in touch with one of the people there. And I said, yeah, my special's coming out on January 28th. And she was like, oh, there's a run you can do. And I go, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a run, #run with Maz. And I'm going to challenge myself. I've been running 5 to 6 miles.
Oh, yeah. I'm the whole time I'm thinking, what clubs? Like a run of clubs. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh wait, I'm running too. Keep going.
Yeah. So I've been running 5 to 6 miles like every other day. So what I'm going to do is I've set a goal Thursday the 28th when my special comes out. I'm going to run 10 miles, #run with Maz. And I've been telling people, set a goal for the 28th, 1 mile, 5 miles, 10 miles, and donate whatever you can to International Medical Corps. My hope and goal is to raise $5,000 for them that day. This is in lieu of like a premiere party. We'll do a run with Maz, and then I'm hoping people will then go and enjoy the special. And if anybody wants to join me on the run with Maz, they can go to my Instagram @Maz Jobrani, and it's in my link tree right there. It just goes to Run with Maz on International Medical Corps, and let's just raise money for a good cause.
All right, I'll do it. I'm gonna I've been running 5.5 miles every day. I'm trying to run 2,000 this year.
What's the most you've ever run?
1,000 miles last year. I ran 1,000 miles.
No, I'm saying at one time, what's your biggest?
A marathon, 26.
You did a marathon. Okay.
Yeah,
I've done half a marathon.
I did half a marathon. And then I did the LA marathon like 2 years ago.
If you ever decide to do another marathon, let me know and I'll train with you. I've wanted to run a marathon.
Oh, I didn't train. I just ran it. I didn't train at all.
Let's do it. Let's do it like legit. You know Chris Williams? You know who Chris Williams is?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You ever see Crazy Eyes Killer on Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yeah.
He's my good buddy. He's run like marathons all over the world. He went and ran in Rome. He ran all over the place.
I heard fucking Eddie Izzard's running another 50 marathons in 50 days.
That's the guy too. He told me about that. That's some. I mean, listen. I just want to run one, but I'd like to.
They suck dick.
Dude, I didn't train for the half one, and I was like, I've never been that sore my entire life. So, but I would like to train for a marathon. And if you're at all on board, if you feel inspired, I say we do it. And like I said, Thursday I'm going to go for 10, and that's the most I've run in the past maybe 15, 20 years. So I'm going to go for
nice. It. Okay. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll hit you up because I'll run on the 28th. I'm already going to be running anyway. I might as well throw in another 5 miles.
Let's do it, dude. Let's do it. Let's hit it, man. I appreciate you doing that. And if you ever have something you're doing where you got to, raise money for something, let me know. I'll do it right back at you.
Hell yeah. I appreciate you doing this, Maz. It was a great conversation, man. And congrats on the special. Love the podcast. And I got to get on the podcast soon.
Hey, we're going to do it. I'm happy to see you like this. I can't wait to see you in person. Hug it out. And I hope your Latino workers complete the house in time.
They think I am such a bitch. Today I saw them and I was like, I have a mask on. I'm outside. They're like looking at me like fucking pussy. And they always cut back to the time and they'll go, do you remember one time when they were building this house, they didn't know what I did for a living. They just saw me come back with men into my man cave and for like 2 hours and then leave giggling. And they said to Leanne one day, they go, what does he do? She's like, what do you mean? They're like, he doesn't have a job. Like he doesn't work. What does he do? He just goes back in that room with men. And they were making fun of me thinking I'm just back here fucking dudes. And then
hilarious.
All right, I'm a prostitute.
Hilarious.
So I'm such a bitch, but
hilarious.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm telling you, dude, we had work done at our house too. And when I see these guys do the things they do, exactly like you said, I'm like, oh my God, I got to up my game, bro.
I got no game compared to these guys. Yeah. Up on the fucking roof, no fucking rope, 2 stories, putting in fucking roofing. And I'm just like, oh my God. Like,
yeah, it's crazy. And it's funny because like, you'll be like, I feel like the guy, like you said, he's doing roofing. I'm like, hey, this electrical thing is not working. He's like, don't worry, my friend. And he goes over and like, he knows the fuse. He knows where my shit. I'm like, how do you know where everything is? He's like, I got it, man. Don't worry. I'm like, oh shit. Meanwhile, I can't my wife is so funny, dude. My previous house, my wife got sick of these light bulbs that were out and I was always touring and I'd be like, I'll get them. It's just literally screwing in a light bulb.
Yeah.
I'll get them. So one day I show up, she's like, I got a task rabbit coming to do the light bulbs. I go, what? I go, are you crazy? She's like, you were always away. You never did. All right, whatever. You already got the lady, let her come. Dude, this task rabbit girl comes. She starts walking around the house with like a notepad to go see what bulbs she's got to buy. She goes on top of this one like little case where we keep plates and there's a light coming off of it. And she looks and she's like, did you guys know that there's like a book up here that's on fire? And we're like, what? We had no idea. Like this task rabbit saved our house from just fucking going on. Anyway, it's funny, dude.
Awesome, brother. I will talk to you soon. Congrats on everything, man.
Thanks, Bert. Talk soon.
All right, later, brother.
Okay, bye-bye.